Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pathways to Careers webinar. This is a webinar on how current undergraduate anthropology students can explore a variety of career paths. My name is Palmyra Jackson. I am a Black woman, I have Black hair, and I am wearing a blue dress, and behind me I have some foliage. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers, and I am the Education Research Coordinator at the AAA. A little bit about my career pathway is that I graduated with a bachelor's degree in cultural anthropology and humanities for teaching in 2017. Shortly after, I was an intern with the AAA and the National Museum of African Art. And since then, I have explored 4 or 5 different career pathways to where I got where I am here today. I am joined today by my colleague, Katie. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's really great to see so many participants. So my name is Katie Patschke, and I use she, her, hers, and I am a white woman with blonde hair, and today I'm wearing a brown shirt with a gold necklace. I am the Executive Office Coordinator here at the American Anthropological Association. A little bit about my past. I studied my undergrad at Susquehanna University, where I majored in international relations and anthropology with a minor in studio art. After graduating, I moved to Seoul, South Korea for a year where I was an English teacher. I then moved to Dublin, Ireland for a year where I went to Dublin City University where I got my master's degree in international relations. I am also a former intern of the AAA in the summer of 2014, and that's actually how I got my position today at the American Anthropological Association. So for my portion of the presentation, I'm going to be talking to you all about 3 different things. The first is the career search process, the second is the application process, and the third is the interview process. Take it away, Palmyra.
Thank you, Katie. This is Palmyra speaking. So today, Katie and I will be offering you tangible steps that you can take right now. So it is recommended that you take notes or screenshots of the slides, and a recording of this webinar will be posted on the AAA website along with a copy of the slides and a transcript. The informative part of this webinar will be about 30 minutes, and then we will use the remaining 15 minutes for a Q&A. To make this webinar more accessible to everyone, we are providing closed captioning and ASL interpreting. Katie and I will also be providing visual descriptions of our slides throughout the presentation. And during the webinar, as Nell mentioned earlier, please keep your videos and microphones off to increase our bandwidth. And then if you have a question for us, you can enter it into the chat box. But please know that we won't be answering questions until the end of the presentation. All right. Now, just to let you all know that this webinar is part of an ongoing series that will focus on different career pathways that you can take in applied anthropology. So on the screen right now is a schedule of the upcoming webinars. On March 11th, there will be a discussion on user experience jobs. On March 18th, a discussion on working in hospital settings. March 25th is on cultural resource management. April 1st is contemplating a career in tech. April 8th is on careers in the public sector. April 15th is using your skill sets to be an accessible designer. And then April 22nd is building a career in geographic information systems, also known as GIS. And all of these webinars will be on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned to learn more. All right, so let's start our webinar off with a question that undergraduates usually have, and that is, what's the difference between a career opportunity and a job opportunity? While the answer may seem simple in that careers relate to your long-term goals or interests and jobs are short-term and just help you make ends meet, I'd like to offer a different perspective. This answer is careers are formal opportunities for practice and jobs are informal opportunities. What I mean by this is that careers are usually positions that ask you to apply what you learned in college to real world settings. They'll say, we want you to apply qualitative research methodologies, ethnography, or data analysis to support the function of this organization. Whereas jobs will usually say, we want you to fulfill certain duties, especially if in the service industry, it might be talking with customers, or maintaining a cash register. But although this seems like it may not relate to your career goals, you can use this opportunity to practice anthropology. You shouldn't wait to apply anthropology for your career. You can start right now. You can practice anthropology in any setting. I'll give you an example. So it's very unlikely that the first job you get out of college is going to be as a research assistant at the United Nations. Although that is a very good job, your first job may be like mine. I was a waitress at a local restaurant. And there seems to be a lot of shame when people's jobs don't align with the thing that they majored in. But that shouldn't be shameful. It's actually a chance for you to practice anthropology in a real world setting. So rethink how your current or future job is an opportunity to practice. So, for example, although I was working at a restaurant, I was still using my anthropological skills. I observed how people were using tables and chairs. They were constantly moving them around to accommodate group size, to be near windows, to be next to outlets. It became a very disjointed dining room. So I approached my boss and I said, what if we rearrange the dining room to fit people's needs? She agreed, and so we did. Easy enough, and it actually ended up being an increase of customers. They stayed longer, they wrote higher reviews, and with my interpersonal skills, I was able to connect with customers and talk about cuisines that they were not used to trying and make it a more personal experience that they enjoyed. Now, this anecdote highlights some key transferable skills that all employers are looking for: the ability to gather information, communicate that to an audience who's not familiar with either your discipline or your research. Third is communicating actionable results. And then four is measuring success. And then, of course, interpersonal skills are transferable to any job. To represent this, I have an image on the slide to the right that's of a barista pouring coffee. This image exemplifies how many people's first jobs are in the service industry. So I'd like for you to think about how you can practice anthropology now and hone some of those transferable skills. The first question is, how can you apply anthropology to improve efficiency, support services, or programs? The second is, what skills can you hone now that will be transferable to your career? And then finally, what makes you stand out from your colleagues? How does a background in anthropology set you apart? The answers to these questions will help you practice anthropology and then also talk to future employers about how that job relates to your career pathway. Moving on to the next slide, I'd like to discuss how you can explore career possibilities. On this slide to the right, I have an illustration of a person using the computer, a phone, and writing information down to show you how you can use your social networks and the internet to figure out your career pathway. And I just want to let you know there's construction above me, so you may hear knocking every now and then, but don't worry, no one's at the door. um, so these thinking exercises on the left will help you figure out of how to narrow down your career pathway. Because as you know, a degree in anthropology means that you can do anything you want, which can be pretty daunting. So where do you begin? So the question I'd like you to consider is, what do the day-to-day tasks entail? So for example, when I graduated, I was really interested in international development, which is a very broad field, and there's multiple ways to get involved in that industry. So I had to think about, what did I want to do? Well, I wanted to do program evaluation, and I wanted to work with an organization that provides assistance to people who are living on the margins. I wanted to interview people. I wanted to use qualitative research methods to see information that wasn't available through quantitative methods. So that was both what day to day would look like, and then also how I would use anthropology in those settings. And then third question is, what satisfaction do you hope to gain from this career? Satisfaction I would gain is that over time, I could help organizations reduce the amount of money that is going to programs that provide little to no alleviation, and I could tailor it to what people actually needed. And then I'd also be able to help people in a holistic way. So this is an example of how you can answer these questions with enough detail. And by the end of it, you'll have career terms that you can search through LinkedIn or other professional networking sites, which I'll get to in just a second. The next question that students typically have is, do I need to attend graduate school before launching my anthropology career? So you have an idea of what you want to do, but do I need to be a PhD or have a PhD to be a real anthropologist or a master's degree? The answer is no. Graduate school is not required. Some of the best advice that I got is that it's good to get experience prior to going back to school. The way that I justify this as well is for most of our lives, we are in school. And so it feels normal to continue doing that. And it feels abnormal to enter into something that you really don't have experience with. But it's good to get firsthand experience to make sure that the field that you are interested in aligns with what you actually want to do. So, as I said at the beginning, I tried 4 or 5 different career pathways because I realized I'm not interested in those things. And through trial and error, I was able to find what I'm interested in. Additionally, when you have firsthand experience, you can see what skills employers actually want. Sometimes they want an advanced degree, sometimes they don't. They just want you to have more experience or to accept challenging work. And an alternative to a degree are certificates. So those are usually you go to a program for a couple of months and you get an endorsement or a certificate in a certain area, usually like a technical skill, like statistical analysis. To find out if you need a graduate degree or not, I recommend using professional networking sites to figure out your career pathway. On this slide, I have an image of about a dozen human profiles that are connected by lines to represent how social networks can be used to your advantage. So when you answered the questions in the last exercise, you came away with career terms. So for me, it was program evaluation, assessment, holistic was important to me, qualitative research, interviewing. So then I would take these terms and I would enter it into LinkedIn and I'd tie it with international development to make sure that I was getting the right responses or results, sorry. I recommend LinkedIn because you can look for jobs and individual profiles and companies. If you know of one that's better, you can use that and follow these steps there too. Once you enter those terms in, repeat that step for several times to find industries that are in the nonprofit sector, private sector, or in the government. The biggest mistake that I made was that I thought, oh, all nonprofits are good, so I'm going to only look at nonprofits. But that's not the case. These sectors are more indicative of their what they file for taxes. So there are plenty of nonprofits that don't align with your beliefs or interests. There are many private sector positions at consulting firms or businesses that work with the government or fill the gaps that nonprofits can't fill. And then government programs also offer a way to reach multiple communities, not just one individual. So look at multiple industries to get a sense of what's expected of you. When you find a company or an organization or a government agency that seems of interest, take a look at who works there and what they do and how they discuss how they apply their background to that job. I say this because a lot of times students think they're the first person to meld their other major with anthropology. So for me, it was teaching or international development. For you, it could be graphic design, it could be ecology or advocacy. But the best thing is that you're not the first person. There's usually someone else out there who has already combined that and anthropology, and they've written extensively about it on their profile, and you can use that information to your advantage. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Look at their profiles and see, how did they get into that career track? What was the first position they had? What does their education history look like? And where do you fit in that pathway? You don't have to follow them exactly, but you can use them as a guide to figure out what would be expected of you if you were to move forward. So in my search, I found that research assistant was a common job that people had when they were first entering the field. And they had certificates in quantitative methodologies. So I knew that's what I needed to grow while I was in college if I wanted to enter into that career. Finally, there are more opportunities to practice. You don't have to look for just jobs and careers. You can also look at internships, field schools, and fellowships. The picture on the right may be jarring, but that's of me and Katie. We took that prior to COVID-19, so that's why we were standing next to each other, smiling at the camera, no masks. We were in bliss. Um, and I have a picture of me and Katie because we were both interns with the AAA, and that definitely helped us launch our careers. So if you are interested in being an intern with the AAA, please consider applying. Your application and reference letter are due March 12th. With the internship, you get a chance to work with the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, and or apply archaeology with the Naval Heritage and History Command Center. To find out more, check out the website at americananthro.org/internships, and it's virtual this year. You can also find more opportunities at the Anthro Guide at guide.americananthro.org, or you can read more career resource articles at careercenter.americananthro.org/careers. And then if you're a member of the AAA, you can join section mentoring opportunities. Sections are specialized divisions of the AAA that focus on particular fields of anthropology or are communities for people who have similar identities. Or you could also attend the Careers Expo at the annual meeting. All right, so now that you have some of your major questions answered, Katie's going to discuss how you can do your career search, apply for jobs, and prepare for an interview. Katie?
Thanks, Palmyra. So I'm going to be talking to all of you about 3 different parts of getting a job. So the first is going to be the career search process. The second is going to be the application process. And the third is the interview process. So on this slide here, you can see that there is an image to the right with a blue background and a woman typing on a computer. And to the left, you will see the text. So the first thing we're going to be talking about in your career search process is what job opportunities are out there. So you want to look outward at the world. And so in order to do this, you're going to think about 3 things. The first is location. So you want to research the city or the state that you want to move to or that you're currently living in to search for the career opportunities that are available to you. The next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at jobs that are in your field of study. So what types of jobs are even available in the field that you studied? And the last thing you're going to want to think about is the career type. So what types of careers are available in the line of study that you studied? So for example, are there business jobs out there, government jobs out there, or nonprofit jobs? The second part is you're going to want to think about what jobs do you qualify for. So this is an activity where you are going to create a list of all of your accomplishments. So this is not a resume. This is going to include some things that you've done. So for example, you could include your major, your minor, special certificates you have, languages, computer skills, job experiences, internships, fellowships, clubs, sports, or volunteer. This list is going to help you identify what you have done. Now from this list, you're going to write down skills and experiences that you have learned by accomplishing each of these goals. So for example, if you had an internship at a museum, next to that, you could write that you learned how to curate artwork, research artifacts, and learn to write reports. The last thing you're going to want to think about is what job titles are appropriate to apply to. So do some research on what job titles you qualify for. For example, if you're interested in museums and you just graduated from an undergraduate degree, you should not be applying to management positions. So some helpful keywords to start your search could include assistant, associate, or coordinator. So when you're starting out at an organization, oftentimes you're going to be hired at a lower position than you are qualified for. So this is a great opportunity for you to take some time to prove that you are qualified for the position, and this will allow you to grow in the company that you're currently working in. A lot of times you may think you're overqualified for the job, but you don't know how to work in an office yet. So it's really important to learn office protocol and dress code. Moving on to the next slide, we're now going to be talking about resources for your pathways. So all of these PDF files are actually available for you on the webpage that you signed up for the webinar. So you can simply download all of these PDF files. I would also recommend, if you don't want to do that, you can actually just take a screenshot right now of these PDF files. So on this slide, you will see 3 PDF files. On the left is a blue bookmark. In the center, you're going to see a black half sheet, and all the way to the right, you'll see another black half sheet. So starting with the left, anthropologists in action. So what you're going to see here are some anthropology jobs at big organizations and titles of jobs that they have. So for example, we have community manager at Reddit. We have a health scientist at the Department of Veteran Affairs. We have different organizations such as Nissan, Intel, and IBM. Moving over to the center document, you will see anthropology, where can it take you? So this is going to provide you with a path to a career. So what job opportunities are available? So we have global tech ethnographer, social development specialist, or public health officer, for example. And moving over to all the way to the right to anthropology is a resume builder. So this is a really helpful resource because you're majoring in anthropology and you have taken a lot of anthropology courses, but maybe you don't have a lot of experience working at an anthropology job yet. So what you can do is take the courses that you've done and put those into your resume using keywords. So for example, I'm sure you might have taken some classes on cultural, biological, archaeology, or linguistic anthropology. But if you specialize in one of those, you can use some of these keywords and put them onto your resume. So for example, if you study cultural anthropology, you could use words such as ethnography, data analyst, marketing, interpersonal skills. If you are interested in learning more about what anthropologists do, you can visit americananthro.org/anthrocareers. And if you're interested in maybe pursuing a graduate degree in master's or a PhD, or want some more resources for internship opportunities that are available or field schools, you can visit us at americananthro.org/guide. So moving on to the next slide, we are now going to be talking about waging the gap. So now that you have your list and you have identified what career opportunities are out there and what skills you have, it's time to wage that gap. So we want to take you and find a career that would match everything you have accomplished and help you to grow and learn. So on this slide on the right-hand side, you will see a highlighter that has highlighted some words in a news article. And on the left, you're going to see the text. So how you're going to do this is first you're going to start by searching for 2 dream career opportunities that interest you. So you're going to print out those job opportunities and you're going to take 3 highlighters, green, yellow, and pink. So you're going to read through the job posting, and with the green highlighter, you're going to highlight everything that you know how to do. With the yellow highlighter, you're going to highlight something that you can learn how to do or that you're interested in. And with the pink highlighter, you're going to highlight things that you don't know how to do and you are not interested in. So for example, I was an English teacher in Seoul, South Korea for 1 year, but I really wanted to use my degree and be an assistant at the Smithsonian. So I did this activity for both of these jobs, and I quickly saw which job I was more qualified for and passionate about. So this also might help you decide which career path you would like to go down and which job makes the more sense for your long-term career goals. So for example, my long-term career goal was to be the director of the Smithsonian. So it made a lot more sense for me to take the assistant position at the Smithsonian. So the next tip is, what are the steps to accomplish your bigger goal? So in your search, it's also important to identify which entry-level positions you're looking for and how this fits into your bigger long-term goals. So for example, if you want to be an anthropology professor, you're going to want to probably start by finding some universities that are local near you, and you might want to apply for research assistant positions in the anthropology department at these universities. So this is a great opportunity because once you get your foot in the door, it will create an opportunity for you to grow. And it's also important to recognize that often we have to take jobs we don't want to do maybe, or that are challenging, to reach our bigger goals. So on the next slide, we're now going to be looking at some links for career search. So when you're looking for career opportunities, sometimes you're not sure where to start. So these are some career search engines that could be helpful for you. So you can feel free to take a screenshot of this as well. So some options we have are LinkedIn, Indeed, USA Jobs, Idealist, and Monster. And it's always important to remember to apply on the individual company's webpage if applicable. So another career resource we have for you is Glassdoor. It's an incredible opportunity because on Glassdoor, you can take a position that you are interested. So for example, if you want to be an assistant at Google, you could type that into Glassdoor. And what is going to come up is some comments on people who've had that position or who currently have that position and how they like it or they don't like it. It will also provide you with the salary information about what that position is now. So it's a great opportunity and something to always look at before you go on an interview. So, and the next thing I wanted to mention to all of you is it's really important to make sure you negotiate your salary, your benefits, and your annual leave. Now, this is something that you do not want to do during the interview. During the interview, you can ask what the salary range is for the position to decide if that's a position that is of interest to you. But you don't want to negotiate your salary until they offer you the position. Once they offer you the position, that is the time when you can negotiate your salary, benefits, and annual leave. The next thing I wanted to share with all of you is informational interviews or virtual coffee since we do live in Corona. So an informational interview, if some of you haven't heard of it before, it's a really great opportunity for you to reach out to someone that is interested in the field that you would like to work in, that's already working in that field. And what it is, it's an opportunity to learn about real life experience of somebody who's working in a field or company that interests you. So remember, this is not a job interview. So you want to make sure you keep the focus on getting information. And then the last thing I wanted to share with all of you is about connecting with temporary agencies and doing contract work while you're searching for a position. So temporary work is a great opportunity to get your foot in the door at a big organization that maybe you wouldn't have the opportunity. So you might be starting off at minimum wage at that organization, but if you prove yourself and you prove you're really interested in working for that specific company, sometimes they'll hire you full time. It's a very popular thing to work for a temporary agency in the Washington, D.C. area, so the DMV, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. So temps are a great way, again, to get your foot in the door of these big companies. The AAA actually uses temps to outsource work for our big annual meeting that we have every year. Another tip I have for all of you is I just want to make sure you don't discount yourself from applying to positions that you don't 100% match up with. So if the job requires 3 years of research experience and you only have 2 years of research experience, you should still apply. The job posting it's not a mandatory list of everything that you have to have. It's more like a wish list. So if you qualify for most of those things, it's okay to apply to that position. So moving on to the next slide, we're now going to be transitioning and talking about the application process. So on this slide, you're going to see on the right-hand side, we have 2 applications in blue, and on the left-hand side, we have the text. So the 4 tips that I have for you today about the application process, the first is make sure you take time to apply to the position. The next thing, you want to make sure you're going to craft your resume to fit the position. So for help editing your resume, you can visit your career center on campus, or you can ask a family member or a friend to assist you in editing your resume. You always want to make sure somebody looks at your resume before you put that out to job postings. So if you want to work at if you want to work at a museum, it's really important to look up specific resumes that would cater to that position that you're actually applying to. So for example, if you want to be a curator at a museum, you should look up resumes and take keywords and skills from that resume to cater to your resume. And you always want to make sure you put the most relevant positions on the top of the resume. So when the reviewer is looking at your resume, they can see that first. The next thing is always make sure you include a cover letter in your application. It shows that you're really interested in the position and you took some extra time to apply to that position. So I do have a few tips for you about how to write a good cover letter. So the 3 things you want to think about is first, what have you done to lead to this position? The next is how this position fits in with your future or long-term goals that you have. And then the last thing is, what are you going to bring to their organization? And then the last thing to always remember is make sure you apply on the company's webpage if applicable. Moving on to the next slide, we're now going to be talking about the interview process. So on this slide, on the right-hand side, you will see 2 people shaking hands, and on the left-hand side, you will see the text. So for the first point I want to bring up to all of you is you should always print out the job posting. So the job posting actually can go away sometimes by the time you have the interview. So if you print that out, that'll be readily available to you. And what you're going to do is you're going to read through the job posting and highlight what they're looking for and write down how you have accomplished that skill set through your own experiences. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you memorize your resume and be ready to pull in examples from your resume that highlight how you're a good fit for the position. And the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you practice commonly asked interview questions. So what you can do is you can actually Google commonly asked interview questions and cater your answers to the position you're applying for. So I actually pulled some commonly asked interview questions to share with all of you today. These are the more challenging questions, so it's good to prepare answers for these specific ones. So the first one is, what is your weakest skill? The next one is, why did you leave your last job? The next one is, explain a time when you had a conflict at work and how did it get resolved? Why do you want to work here? And then the next one is, what could our company do better? And always at interviews, make sure you prepare your own questions for the place that you are applying to. And then the last tip is you want to make sure you thank your interviewers and always make sure you follow up a few days or a week after your interview. So we're now going to be transitioning. So thank you all so much for listening to our presentation. So we have provided our contact information for you here. I also wanted to share with all of you that this information that we have shared today is just some starting tips for you for how you can kind of get started in the job application process. This is not a master list. There is much more advice out there on how to get a job. But here is our contact information for Palmyra and myself. So you can feel free to take a screenshot or write down our emails. We are happy to answer any questions that all of you may have about this. And we're now going to be transitioning into the question and answer portion of our webinar. And so if you have a question, feel free to write question and then insert your question after in the chat box and we can answer those. In addition, you can actually unmute yourself and show your video if you would like to ask a question to us live. And so we can get started with that. So do we have any questions?
Katie, I have a question for you. This is Palmyra speaking. So, Katie, a big question that undergraduates have is, how many applications does it take before I get one call back for an interview?
So when I was applying to jobs, I actually ended up applying to about 200 jobs in USA Jobs. And for every 50, I think I got one interview. So it definitely takes a long time to get an interview. But if you keep applying and you apply to jobs that you're qualified for, it definitely will help. So from all of those, I ended up getting about 4 to 6 interviews for 200 applications. And then I did end up getting one of those positions. And Palmyra, I also have a question for you. How do you feel your internship helped you to find a position?
Oh, great question, Katie. So as I said, I was an intern with the AAA in the National Museum of African Art. I graduated from Seattle University, and once I found out about the internship, I decided to move to DC. Being with both organizations, I worked as hard as I could. I tried to do everything within my power to show that I was the best intern they ever met, which is not true because they also met other interns. But just to show that you need to work as hard as you can so that they will call you back later, which is what happened. I ended up getting a part-time position at both the AAA and the museum a few months after my internship ended, and I stayed in contact with them. Through that, I was able to do a lot of career exploration. So as I said, I started off being interested in international development, but after meeting with a lot of anthropologists in different industries, I was thinking about medical anthropology. And now my latest thing is about programs. I really enjoy creating educational programs for students or kids and their families. So that's how the internship got me started.
Thanks, Palmyra. It looks like we actually have a question from Serena in the chat. Thank you so much, Serena. So the question is, should I always write an objective in the resume, or would including a cover letter be sufficient? So I would say, I think for me personally, I don't have an objective on my resume. I think it might be better to include that information in your cover letter. But if you feel that it's a job that you really want, I would keep it very brief at the top. Palmyra, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, so I think this is a style preference. I have an objective or a profile or summary at the top of my resume, and I use that for applying to government jobs and then also for private sector positions. It's good if it's 2 or 3 sentences and really provides a synthesis or summarizes what you're good at, has a lot of great verbs, so that when they're going through your all these resumes, they see that profile and know if you're a fit. But it depends if you have space, and if you can do it in a stylistic way. I think that's what also matters. That's a great question. Oh, another one just jumped in, Katie. How much flexibility have you found in negotiating on benefits and vacation? Does that flexibility vary based on the size of the organization?
So I definitely have a response for this one. So for me, I've worked in government and nonprofit. So in government, zero flexibility from my experience. So it's whatever days they tell you that you have whatever benefits you have. So with government, no flexibility. But with nonprofits, businesses, things like that, there is flexibility. And I personally have been able to negotiate my salary. And I highly recommend asking to negotiate your salary always. And I think another thing to think of is always ask for higher and expect to get a little bit lower. So if you ask for a certain number, you're probably going to land lower than that. So just be ready for that. And then what was the second part? Does that flexibility? Yeah, I would say it probably varies based on the size of the organization. The AAA is a smaller organization, so I haven't had experience working with larger companies with that. Palmyra?
Yes, I haven't had too much experience, so I can't speak too much to that.
How
Um,
I think we have another question coming in here. So,
yes.
how many pages should your resume be? Short, as short as it can be. Maybe I would say aim for a page because if you are just coming out of undergrad, it shouldn't be longer than a page. If you are starting your master's or PhD, a page and a half, probably max. Palmyra, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I would say most jobs will ask you for just 1 page. This means you have to really pick out the things that apply to that job. Don't include being a resident assistant if it doesn't work for that job. When you get further in your career, you may have a longer resume, and some government jobs may say you can submit a resume that's up to 5 pages, but stick with the 1 page until someone tells you otherwise.
Yes. For the government jobs, you are allowed to have a little bit bigger, but not for other jobs. So if your government one is 2 or 3 pages, that's okay, but not the other ones at all. All right, we have another question. Hello, I was wondering about in links that you sent for field schools and internships as an undergraduate student, and I did not come up with almost anything. Maybe you can share some tips about using AnthroGuide and American Anthro. Palmyra, do you have an answer for that one?
Sure. So search around. Sometimes they have not filled out all their information on the Anthro Guide, but you can use that as a starting point and go to that university website. So, like Katie said, usually they have an application open on their homepage. So look around and use that as a starting point. There are also the Smithsonian offers various summer internships as well. So look at that. Not all these opportunities are advertised, so you have to do a little bit of hunting and work to get to it. But while you were talking about looking at internships, definitely apply for the AAA summer internship program. It is one of a kind. As an intern, you get a chance to apply anthropology in a real world setting. You're not making copies, you're not running coffee orders, you are doing actual work in a work environment. And Katie and I successfully implemented a virtual internship last year. So we are able to do it again. And you will have a wonderful opportunity working with AAA staff and the partner sites. That is the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and the Naval Heritage and History Command Center. That was a great question that you asked. I don't see any more coming in. Oh, here's one. Is the AAA internship open to graduating seniors? Do you mind if I answer that question, Katie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, the answer is yes. I applied my senior year. and I graduated that June and moved to DC in July. So it is open. Katie, you know the specific ranges of who's able to apply?
So, and to clarify, seniors meaning college seniors, not high
Yeah.
school, just to clarify, because we have had some high schoolers apply. So for the qualifications, it would be rising sophomores, juniors, rising juniors, sophomores, sorry, seniors, and then first year master's students or PhD students as well. So please apply. Applications are open, and we are going to be closing on Friday, March 12th. And make sure you get your reference letters in, because we have tons of applicants and most people don't get their reference letters in, and that's why they're not qualified. So just make sure you get that letter in. Okay, so let's see. The next question is for the internships, could you comment on could you comment on what kind of previous experience is desired in candidates? So, Palmyra, do you have an answer for that one?
Oh, sure. So, what I've been telling applicants is apply anyway. But what is good is that for these internships, they are not looking for someone who fits it 100%. So if you're looking at the folk life part of the internship, some students have been dismayed by the part that says you'll be doing some administrative tasks like keeping track of costs or maintaining some Excel sheets. That should not be your focus. The focus is that this aligns with your mission or your interest, or you want to see what it's like to work in a museum setting. So don't get caught up in the details for internships like this. If you have a background in cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, folklore, and also any heritage work, I definitely recommend that. For the Naval Heritage and History Command Center, that is great for people who are studying archaeology or biological anthropology. They do ask that you have a little bit of experience, at least with applying those methods, since there are more technical skills and you'll be working on actual sunken ships or helping track coordinates. But you don't have to match it to a T. I wouldn't get too worried. It doesn't hurt to apply anyway. Let us decide, or let them decide if you qualify. Don't discount yourself from any opportunity. Take every chance you get, because it is a way to make your career pathway.
I also
Um,
want to answer a question we missed from Andrew. This presentation was great. Would you recommend to anthro majors, particularly those interested in archaeology, joining groups like the American Anthropological Association? And what are some of the benefits? So I would definitely recommend joining for anthro majors, even if you're interested in archaeology, because actually one of our internships this summer is the Naval History and Heritage Command, which focuses a lot on archaeology as well. And Palmyra, do you have a response to any of that as well, or?
to what the benefits are for joining the AAA is that you get access to professionals working in the field that you want. Some of the benefits that I highlighted in my slide, such as the section mentoring opportunities, are not available if you're a non-member. You get a chance to also attend the annual meeting, which is great for undergraduates to present their work and to meet other anthropologists who are doing the very thing that you want. So if LinkedIn searching is not going well, or you want to have those informational interviews that Katie was asking, by being a member of the AAA, you get access to that community, and you have at least one connection point that we're both AAA members, and that will help you connect with people. And then there is another question. Sorry, I'm scrolling down. There's been a lot. Now that this summer's internship program is virtual, what time commitment are we looking at? This person has already taken on some work, and so they're wondering what's the level of involvement. Katie, either of us can answer, but
Yeah, I
would you
can
like
answer
to?
that one. That's fine. So thank you for asking that, Gabby. So for the summer internship, it is a full-time position. So you will be working 9 to 5 EST time. Now, the thing is with this internship, it's a big time commitment. It's 6 weeks. It's to end of June to the early August. And you actually have 2 internships within this internship. So for 2 days a week, you're going to be working at the AAA offices. And for 3 days a week, you're going to be working on at the other site locations that we partner with. So it's a very full commitment. We do offer a stipend for this internship, which is very rare. So expenses would be covered, such as food. And so I definitely recommend applying. And even if you can't apply this year, make sure you apply for next year as well. Um, and then let's see, we have some, I also,
Someone asked a great question about fees for membership. So there is a list of what the costs are on the AAA website, and it is adjusted for income level and then also for student status. If you have any issues, I do recommend reaching out to our membership department. If your anthropology department is part of our partners program, I believe you also get free membership through that. So take a look at the website. If you encounter any difficulties, please do not hesitate to reach out to us as well.
and then who's new? We skipped your question.
That's the
Yeah.
question that I just answered.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Mhm. And then are recent graduates eligible for the internship? Um, Recent graduates of undergraduate university.
So that is so if you just graduated in December 2020, you are not eligible unless you have applied to graduate school and you have been accepted.
And once again, if you want to look at the eligibility requirements, including the last question of can international students apply? The answer is yes. All of this information is on the AAA website, so please take a look. We pasted the link earlier on where to find the internship information. It's americananthro.org/internships.
Abigail, to answer your question, can international students apply for the internship? Yes, they can. Just remember that it is in EST time zones. We are a little bit flexible, but we work around 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time. So just be conscious that if you did want to apply, that will be the time zone. Yes, there is no age requirement as long as you fit the, oh, sorry, would adult undergrad students older than 25 be eligible to apply? There is no age requirement. That's totally fine. When I had my internship, I was interning with someone that was in their 30s. So totally fine. Yep, we just want to make sure that you are in, like I said, a sophomore, rising sophomore, junior, or senior, or first year grad student.
Do we have any questions about how to practice anthropology in jobs? Does anyone have any more questions about what anthropology looks like? And just once again, Katie and I are answering these questions and are just trying to give you an introduction to how you can launch your career pathway. But you can also tune in to the webinars that are coming up every Thursday at 1 p.m. Anthropologists will be discussing different industries. So if you want to learn more about those, please continue to tune in to the AAA website. So do you have information about media anthropology and how does that look like? Aside from plugging in the continuing of the webinar series, I'd like to ask you to think about what does media anthropology mean to you and what do the day-to-day tasks look like? How are you using anthropology in these settings? So, and all these questions start off with, this is what I want to do. I want to do media anthropology, but now you have to think at a smaller view of what does that actually mean for me and what am I looking for in an employer? And then likely as you do that search, as I recommended, looking on LinkedIn of people who have a similar background or doing that very thing, you can see what that career looks like.
So Abigail asked a question, what other jobs have you had where you really got to apply anthropology, but in a different way? So I've had a lot of different job experiences and I've lived abroad a lot of times. So I've traveled, backpacked around the world extensively. And so with the experiences where you live abroad, you use anthropology every single day. You have to adapt to your surroundings, adapt to the culture, adapt to the people. And, it's the same thing for you living your everyday lives here. You kind of get so used to the way we live our lives, but there's ways you can apply anthropology every day about how you communicate with people. So for example, when I was saving to go to grad school to get my master's in Dublin, Ireland, I actually watched elderly people for a year. And while I was there, I had to adapt my communication skills to be able to speak with the elderly couple because I couldn't talk the same way that I communicated with my friends and peers. So it was using that way of communication in that position that I had, that I used anthropology in my everyday life. So always remember that you can use it wherever you are, in whatever position you are.
Great answer. And then I'll just give everyone in the audience a warning. We have 10 minutes left. If you have any last minute questions that you would like to ask us, please feel free to use the chat box. If you would like to use your mic or video, please let Nell know at AAA Access Nell, and she'll help you set that up. Otherwise, at the end of this, you can email Katie and myself. Oh, and then someone just offered their email address in the chat, and that's wonderful to make those types of connections. And then just so everyone knows, my email is pjackson@americananthro.org, and Katie's is kpatschke@americananthro.org. Oh, and then just for anyone who missed it in the chat, we have someone who said they can help anyone else with questions about archaeology. You can chat with them here or email them at oh gosh, sorry, I almost messed up. archaeologicalanalytics@gmail.com. So that's archaeologicalanalytics@gmail.com.
And Abigail just asked, did you enjoy your government jobs and what were they like? So for my government job, I gave tours of the US Capitol building. So I did enjoy that. It was a very cool experience. I just thought it was very unique. So I did enjoy it. It was nice to work with the public. And there are a lot of benefits to working in the government, but it's definitely hard to find a position in there. And a lot of times it was temporary work. So the position I actually had was a contract work. So it ended after 8 months. And so that's actually how I transitioned to the AAA. But I definitely recommend applying to government positions. I think they're pretty stable. And especially with COVID, I think after you work for a few months, it's pretty difficult to be let go. They give you a lot of warnings and there's a lot of benefits. So I think it's a great job, especially given the situation that's happening now. What was it like to apply anthropology in different countries? So I think you, when you live abroad, you are kind of the outsider in their world. So I think it's, you try to assimilate to their culture as best as you can in everyday life. So for example, when I was traveling in Thailand, like not using a fork, using chopsticks, or just different small ways in your everyday lives. And then the other thing is, I always say it's you can communicate with people that you don't speak their language. You can use your hands to talk to people. And so I think using those kind of communication methods can go a long way. A lot of people said, how did you communicate with people that spoke Korean? And I said, well, I was able to kind of just use my body language to be able to communicate with them. And then we have another question from Bailey.
Yes. It looks like Bailey's main question is, where should a BA in cultural anthropology focus their applications? And so Bailey, this touches on what I discussed, and that you may feel like what I felt, I can do anything. So what does that exactly mean? So once again, what do you enjoy about cultural anthropology? If you're having difficulty answering that question, I recommend looking at internships and field schools where you can learn how it works in different settings. When I was in college, I tried different classes. So I took a course in international development and I traveled abroad with that program. And that's when I realized this is what I want to do. And this is how cultural anthropology applies to settings where they kind of focus more on the economics of a situation and not always the personal experience of people. So I noticed that's where anthropology can fit. So when you're thinking of cultural anthropology, what element do you want to add from that discipline to any field? So what makes you happy? What kind of satisfaction do you gain? If you're doing a methods class, try to pick a project that will challenge you to apply methods in a real life scenario to see what fits for you.
And
Katie, you also study cultural anthropology. You have something?
yeah, I majored in cultural anthropology as well. So where should you focus? Just as a starting point, and you can maybe do that highlighter activity that I suggested with printing out the 2 job postings that you're interested in. But maybe you could start off out with like an assistant position at a museum, or maybe you could start in a nonprofit, like an assistant position at a nonprofit organization that you're interested in. I think there's a lot of, you could look at public policy jobs in the government. So maybe, and even in businesses, you could see if there's some positions for you there. So I would start off with those assistant coordinator or associate titled positions in nonprofit museums. See if you're interested in those to start off.
And this is Palmyra. A key for that is when you're looking at jobs, make sure it says qualitative research methodologies. They're not going to ask for a cultural anthropologist. It's very rare they say we want a cultural anthropologist. So you need to think of other key terms that mean cultural anthropologist. So qualitative research means that. Mixed methods means that because it's both quantitative and qualitative. And looking at personal experiences that counts. So think of not just cultural anthropology, but what that is made up of. Next question is, you briefly mentioned fieldwork for the United Nations. Do you have any experience with the United Nations or more information to elaborate on? Um, no, I don't. I was using that as an example in that usually the first job you want is working at this elite place. Katie mentioned the Smithsonian. I mentioned United Nations because that seems like a cool job. But it's best to get experience in a variety of things because your first idea of what you're interested in may be wrong later on, like myself. If you want to apply for the United Nations, you can still apply, never discount yourself for positions, but I'd recommend looking at other organizations or positions that are similar to what you would be doing at United Nations. So don't just limit your job search to just United
And
Nations.
and I want to piggyback off what Palmyra said because it's really important to think about this. So if you want to work for a really big company, you might either not get the job or have a really small position at the job. But if you apply to a smaller position company, sometimes you have a bigger role, and it's easier to kind of learn a lot more. So that's just something to think about. And I think we are wrapping up in a moment here, but thank you all so much for joining us in this webinar. We really enjoyed sharing our information with all of you. And yeah, if you want to contact us, please feel free. Our emails are there. I hope you all stay safe and enjoy the spring that's coming up.
Yes, and really what we're hoping for is that you can avoid the pitfalls that we encountered as new graduates of undergrad. So be gentle with yourself as you're applying for multiple jobs. And remember, this is a starting point. So feel free to talk to your career center, professors, and if you're an anthropology or sorry, an American Anthro member, talk with other anthropologists in your section. All right. And oh, one last thing is that my colleague Daniel, who I work with, replied to Bailey and said, I'm a linguist, which is really similar in that way. Daniel recommends looking at how Gretchen McCulloch says, think of it as linguistics plus X, which means what do you want to use anthropology for? So once again, don't just think this is what I want to do, just culture anthropology or just linguistics. Think about what else do you want to use it for? How does it apply? What do you enjoy? What is the X that you can add to that that will set you apart from everyone else? Thank you everyone for joining. A recording of this webinar, also a copy of our slides and the transcript will be posted on the AAA website. We really appreciate meeting you, and I hope we can talk with you again in another setting. Thank you.
So, bye.
Goodbye.